We've been around since 2012. We're specialists in the implementation of Oracle ERP, HCM, EPM. We're actually an award-winning platinum partner. We were the first, and indeed for a little time the only, on Oracle's modernized program. And that recognizes our expertise and respect within the industry. Really, the thing about Namos is we really are built on passion. We are passionate about delivering for our clients and stakeholders. And to us, it's not just a client-customer relationship, it's a one-team approach. So we work on building that trust and long-lasting relationship. We don't want just a small-scale one-off engagement, and for customers to feel that we disappear. We would like to always be a partner that you can trust and rely on. And finally, we're completely UK based, so no offshore. All our clients are supported on site where possible, and that's our preferred way of engaging, which is interesting times for us at the moment, but do well remotely. But yeah, our way going forward will always be face-to-face with UK-based employees. So a bit about Namos in terms of our mission. It all really does center around this mantra of we are big enough to deliver and small enough to care. So we've shown that we can deliver HCM or core HR at a large university such as University of Greenwich, and you'll hear from some of the Greenwich guys later. We can do that in 7 months because of our scale and our expertise. But we do that whilst being small enough to care about what those drivers for our customers are. And really the core values of professionalism, expertise and trust shines through in what we do. So that's a bit about Namos, but I'm actually a fairly new starter to Namos. I'm actually pretty much 12 years, most of my professional career in HE, so 12 years all told. So there's me leading out the procession at University of Birmingham, presenting at UCISA, and a rather cringy photo top left as well. So I've joined as Namos's higher education lead. So that role is really centered around ensuring quality for all of our HE customers, both in a kind of project and delivery mode, but also in terms of ensuring that our tender responses come back with requirements that will actually meet HE requirements, but making sure that's followed through to the end products that our clients get. So way back when I first, my first foray into HE was actually as a developer, an Oracle developer, developing bespoke HR payroll software on Oracle platforms. From there, I was various roles along the way, including some crazy job titles, such as Application Services Sustenance Team Manager of Bespoke, my personal favorite. But what that really was service owner, or the single throat to choke, as it were, accountable for all of our core systems back at University of Birmingham. My most recent role there was as head of application management, where I used to head up quality assurance, business analysis, and application operations. And really, but it was my final role there, where I was seconded to their ERP and HCM implementation, so their finance and HR systems implementation of Oracle. And it was one of the largest footprints of any implementation in Europe at the time. And 66 integrations, decommissioning of legacy systems, so many modules that you wouldn't. And the nice poison chalice for that one was as head of cutover. So it was my accountability on the university side to make sure all of that landed at the same time in the right order. So what I'm going to do with this webinar is I'm going to take through a pestle. So what are the factors affecting HE as I see them across political, economic, social, and technological, legal, environmental. Before rounding that back, playing some of that back and saying where I feel that some of those challenges and opportunities can be met by moving to the cloud and managed service for elements of that estate. Without further ado, I'll jump into that. So, political. In terms of HE, these are interesting times politically. I think that the thing to remember is, I know, whilst I'll go on to some of the present challenges in the sector in terms of Corona and COVID-19, sorry, and funding streams, we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that actually politically, HE has been in a period of change for quite some time. I felt government largely ignoring or just letting us get on with what we were doing and enjoying the kudos of UK higher education being world renowned, to really paying a heavy interest on the sector, and some would say somewhat disruptive at times. Whether that's necessary disruption or not, time will tell. But really the political climate is mixed. So from political tone being quite provocative, you know, we all remember that we've had enough of experts remarked by Gove, to some of the mixed messages which have been coming out, whether that's between Office for Students, Department of Education, the various MPs, and it's not the same things said differently. There are distinct different flavours of supportive messages across the HE sector. Now, how that plays into civil service reform and how it might look for admissions, we don't know yet. There are certainly overtones of even more of a competitive sector in terms of perhaps different course fees for what's being pressed upon us as low value courses, so non-STEM courses, which I hold personal umbrance with. But time will tell. And certainly I think no matter what, the political overtones for the sector is one of, we will have further disruption. I don't think steady state will return for quite some time. It's a political vote winner or loser, depending on which side of the fence their politics falls on. Aside from some of those political message and civil service reform, we're a sector in constant audit, and I only expect that to increase. So whereas HESA data futures and the like looks like it might be our single source of truth for audit, in actual fact, if you look, we have constant audit and various new ones springing up all the time. And I fully expect OFS to introduce something new at some point as well. And last two things on this slide, Brexit. You can't have a political slide without talking about Brexit. Some would say UK HEIs are bearing the brunt from government about perceived to being on the wrong side of that particular argument. I'm not sure that holds much weight personally, but in terms of Brexit, what we can't get away from is the funding implications. So whether that's Horizon Europe and the tightrope we walk as to whether we are inside of that or outside of that. But on a larger scale, the access to research as students and other sources of EU funding, which I wish I had a crystal ball to say what the answers to those are. Those will reveal themselves in time. On the finance slide, though, we'll talk about one thing is for certain, the number of international students or EU students will certainly drop. And finally, there's a nice segue into international reputation. So we are seeing some falling standings in UK HEIs and global rankings, and a decrease as global competition increases, but also in the present climate. with kudos of the UK perhaps not carrying some of the, in all cases, not worth the between them studying I do apologize. I think we, with regards to the billions of pounds of income that the sector receives from students and research funding and the like, but actually, if you look, whilst it's 38 billion, depending on where you look, the return from that is always quoted back as at least twice over in terms of our gross output to the UK economy. And as for research and development, 76% of our research, of UK HEI's research, is world leading or internationally excellent. Other things economically, financially wise, 2.4 million students studying in the UK. That's a phenomenal number. If you talk about a trainee program, 90% of those graduates employed within 6 months. That's a hell of an acceleration into the workforce. And customer satisfaction of those students who at the end of it go into the workforce, 84%. So I don't know how many of you have looked on TripAdvisor. It's not the climate to do so at the moment, but 90%, 84% of positive ratings, given how many people can be keyboard warriors out there. That's not a bad customer satisfaction rate at all. And certainly UK HEIs are much higher than that. Again, in terms of GDP, 430,000 jobs. And half of those are academic, but the other half are a whole plethora of professional services and other service, hospitality and accommodation and estates type jobs. And wider than that, supporting estimated almost 1 million jobs in total. I suppose Namos higher education lead, I'm certainly of that number. Okay. But in terms of the economic climate, the increase in fees, can't get away from. If you read the Auger report and the like, we're supposed to, UK HEI is supposed to be very cash rich at the moment, allegedly highest per student resource ever. However, aside from current economic climate, even last year, 1 in 4 of those HEIs were posting a deficit. So it is not cash rich in terms of free liquid assets. All assets are invested, and the cost of provisioning that education is only going up. So my thing here about increased running costs, not just in terms of education delivery and research, but also running costs. So and those costs are only going up. But also attracting talent into the sector as well is also increasingly costly. But on a more positive note, what UK HEIs have shown is that they are innovative. We've shown new revenue streams, whether that's universities throwing up new hotels or hiring out venues. The estate is increasingly being used as an asset. I'll go on to commercial partnerships now as well. You're seeing third-party and private sector investment. So whether that's franchises, and every campus now has a Costa or a Starbucks popping up on campus, but also commercial partnerships, so wider investment, not just at a research level, but at an ongoing R&D level. On the Auger report, though, again, it's an unknown quantity somewhat, but we certainly do expect some of the funding proportion to further education colleges is likely to increase. If you do get a chance to read the Auger reports, and it's a nicely written document, it's rather long, but the messages in that, whilst it's been touted as rather disruptive to the sector, there are lots of positives that the Auger report brings out. highlighting what HE brings to the UK. It's not all doom and gloom, but there certainly will be some political sound bites drawn from it. COVID-19, economically, again, crystal ball, I don't have it in front of me, and I don't think anyone knows the impact fully of what coronavirus will mean. We've seen the quickest mobilization of virtual learning and distance learning that I've ever been witness to. We had the 5 years ago or so, HEIs were, every conference you went to was promises about how virtual learning would revolutionize education. And it's been a slow burn. And yet in the space of a month or so, universities moving courses to online and distance learning through collaborations tools has been phenomenal. Now, that's okay to finish off an academic year. The unknown impact of it is whether the next admission cycle goes in and starts from a distance learning perspective, and what that might mean for student welfare and student well-being, student experience. We don't know. There's talk about massive drops in international applications, but at the same time, with a pandemic and what will be a recession, the number of students going into full-time education generally increases. We don't know about what will that mean for student number caps to stop some of the big institutions who bring up all the students in an area. But again, these are all unknown times, and if I had answers to those, I'd be off writing for Gartner and big publications, giving consultancy with a crystal ball in my pocket. But certainly we live in uncertain, unknown territory. Innovation-wise, again, I've spoken about some of how UK HEIs have reacted to challenges that they've faced. The sector will face those challenges of Corona. One of the big things that we're seeing an increase of is how universities are using their rich sources of data to actually model and adapt academic years, both on the student number planning side, which is becoming ever important, especially with whether that's reintroduction of caps, whether it's changing fees values per course. HEIs are needing a way to model that data and quickly get management information responses. So moving that data into information and actually getting knowledge and institutional wisdom out the back of that data. And finally, assets-wise, yes, 52 acres of land. It sounds pretty impressive. It's not exactly liquid assets. And certainly no one wants to sell off to China to sell those masterpieces of art and literature that exist within universities. But yeah, it's often misquoted about how cash-rich universities are. It's not cash-rich if that's a masterpiece sitting on a wall. It's not something that should be sold. And locations. So the diversification in HE is only increasing. That means new campuses, new overseas partnerships, new distance learning solutions as well. Okay, now I do realize I'm going into detail on these. I promise that the pace speeds up. So social-wise, staff and student experience, quite rightly, is now much more at the fore of our thinking, certainly from my experience in UK HEIs, moving to a more persona-minded way of tackling things. So thinking about the user experience as opposed to just the raw functionality. We're seeing more and more of that, quite rightly. And really that's driven by some of the expectations of staff and students. So the latest students are supposedly the second wave of the me generation, Generation Z, who don't expect to have to go queue up to talk to somebody about making an admin change that they could do themselves. They expect self-service systems. They expect systems that adapt to them. There was nothing else. The slides will be available, as will the video. Please do take a read of this at your leisure. There's nothing else I want to draw out on that slide. Technological. So really the thrust of this webinar. There is no escaping that cloud readiness wise, what was kind of a buzzword 10, 15 years ago is now the norm, that at least some of a university's estate systems will be cloud. Now, that is either by a purposeful design choice of digital strategies at universities moving their applications to the cloud, or indeed some of their infrastructure, or sometimes it's just forced by the suppliers. So we've all seen that with Oracle eBiz 12.1 support. There's questions about extended support for that now in present climate, but certainly that support will come to an end in some way, shape or form next year before being paid support. And that's a juncture, that's a fork in the road for universities to assess their estate. And there's many other suppliers in exactly the same position, whether that's Scientia timetabling, keep promising their move to the cloud, or whether that's just suppliers de-supporting any on-premise on the notion that you should be on their cloud-based solution. In terms of the systems that IT technology specialists at universities are focusing on, we're seeing an increase on CRM, digital learning, records focus, and that's really to adapt to all of the pressures and opportunities out there. So whether that's an opportunity of non-typical academic years, condensing 3 years into 2, or doing calendar year-based curricula, or whether that's, as we've seen now, with digital learning and remote virtual learning environments. And all of the thread between all of those solutions is one of CRM. So customer relationship management systems, not just on the recruiting people, recruiting inquiries from students through to admissions, but also throughout their student journey, and adapting curricula and interactions and engagement with the students depending on what that CRM data is showing. We've seen certainly in terms of bespoke development, IT departments at universities having a team of developers with free reign to develop bespoke software of their own volition. Those days are certainly gone, or largely going. We're seeing bespoke only where it's adding competitive advantage, and quite right too, because who wants to invest in the stuff that makes us the same? It's the stuff that makes us different you invest in. And with that has become a much bigger appetite for commercial off-the-shelf, out-of-the-box solutions. On the left-hand side here, data as an asset. Again, I've spoken about this earlier, but I'd go one step further and say, as well as getting that management information out, we're seeing much more heuristic and technologically advanced solutions that can actually verge on artificial intelligence. So taking multiple factors of data and doing pattern analysis and machine learning to actually come out with solutions that a human would find hard to piece together from various information sources. The rise of business analysts, project officers, quality assurance partners, scrum teams, operations. So IT is becoming less and less back office developer focused and much more of a rounded department. And we've seen that at a number of UK universities. You only have to look at UCISA attendance list, and it's not just techies now. And really that's how they can wield some of the commercial out-of-the-box solutions, some of the that are cloud ready, but also so user experience is at the heart of what IT is delivering. And I think universities are playing a little bit of catch up to what a lot of IT departments have been doing over the years. And finally, managed service appetite. It's not that universities just have to do this all upon themselves. Where there are specialist skills that are in short supply and often at a premium, where there are just software that people don't wish to have the overhead of supporting on their own, that's where managed service can be tremendously important. And it's not outsourcing and just the problem goes away. It's an assured partner who can deliver service levels and assurance without the headache. And certainly as somebody who was previously accountable for a very large estate of systems, a multi-million-pound applications budget in my previous role, there were certain systems that I didn't want to have single points of failure on. I wanted a partner, and it was. I anticipate that will only increase as the sector moves to more out-of-the-box commercial off-the-shelf solutions. So that's a bit of technology now. Technology next. There's a lot of people who will say you a lot of things in this arena, but I'll focus on a few things. We've spoken about artificial intelligence, machine learning. I expect a lot of buzzwords around that and different suppliers touting stuff that isn't necessarily always artificially intelligent. However, there are definitely some players out there in digital learning that is incredibly, can offer insights in students that's incredibly astute. I'd imagine I can foresee the next open education era, largely driven by this virtual learning, but also to enable some of this lifelong learning. So forever learn being touted as a buzzword. Now that's where students graduate and their engagement with the university doesn't evaporate, but the universities are increasingly offering ways of carrying on that engagement with their alumni, whether through refresher courses or constant access to course materials. It's a way of retaining that relationship, which can then lead to investment from their alumni. Also, it's just a value add. And finally, on this slide, security. So the largest fine in the HE sector to date has been 120K, but I do expect that for a major UK HEI at some point to break that unfortunate record. There are large estates of systems, single points of failure, often with an aging workforce that are when people retire and systems aren't necessarily able to be fully supported, but they are critical certain functions. You've got a lot of legacy systems around there, and some immaturity in terms of some of that cyber awareness, not necessarily of IT, but in terms of the user base. It's quite a conflict of interest. You've got all of UK HEIs looking at open access to information, whilst at the same time looking at really sensitive data sources that they need to keep the locks on. Okay. Legal-wise, I won't linger too much on this slide. We all know what the slightly militant. There's certainly on the union side further scrutiny being applied, and certainly some of the purported stats there would give rise to thinking that it's certainly justified. The only other things I wanted to draw out in the slide really were accessibility and GDPR. So accessibility legislation came into full force. It came into law last year properly, as if fines could be imposed, and comes into full force in September this year. Universities are public sector in the eyes of accessibility legislation. And yes, there are fines implications, but the greatest risk there is one of reputational. Nobody wants to be the university that disadvantages students with accessibility needs. and quite right too. And GDPR, as I mentioned in the last slide. Environmentally, a couple of points on this slide. Even if your IT departments don't think that it's necessarily that they need to be at the forefront of environmental IT, their students do, and that goes across the piece. So, recent study, 91% of NUS students agree that their HEI should be more to promote sustainable development. And whilst that's a good headline, the actual real implications of this is NSS. Now those 3 optional questions around environment, whilst they could already be used in benchmarks, I'm certain that some of those will become mandatory. So aside from being a good thing to do and the net zero 2050 goal, I'd imagine universities, there have already been headlines about looking at 2030 instead. Really, it's a marker of efficiency as well. So if you're removing redundant processes and thick clients, so PCs that could be replaced by cloud infrastructure, paper that could be replaced by automated workflows and systems. I'd go as far as to say a university that are not hitting some of their environmental KPIs, you'd look at some of their efficiency as well. And certainly OFS, again, there as a disruptor, if it's not drawn out in NSS or HESA, I'd imagine that there will soon be a compulsory carbon emission reporting requirement. Okay. Which brings me on to you'll be pleased to know, my penultimate slide, which is, okay, so I've spoken an awful lot about some of those challenges and opportunities in the sector, from those political constant audit legislation from regulators, from some of the finance, so stretched finances, the need to account for the estates of massive general ledgers that universities have, and the need to actually not just understand the present estate so we can close books on well-audited accounts, but also so we can forecast forwards and the universities gain insight into their financial forecasts. We've spoken about some of those user experience expectations, which again, I hope I've kept saying is a good thing. Spoke about some of the technological affordances. We've spoken about some of the law, and we've spoken about some environment. So which brings me full circle into, okay, so how can cloud applications meet all of the challenges of those and indeed capitalize on the opportunities? Well, shock horror, the answer is they can't, not in totality. There is no magic bullet solution, and certainly from my last job, I grew very weary of every other supplier saying that they had such and such magic bullet. The reality is that cloud can give an awful lot of affordances, which can help, which can give breathing room to your staff, to university staff, to focus on those things. It can remove some of the headaches, and it can capitalize and meet challenges. And it is not a magic bullet solution. The things I really want to focus on, so we've spoken about commercial off-the-shelf solutions. That throwaway line that I gave at the time, invest in the things that make you different, rather than the things which make you the same as everyone else, is completely true. From my previous job, there were so many business cases for really exciting things, but I was too busy quite often doing some of the things, just the mandatory, the legislative compliance. And yeah, we did some fantastic things at my previous employer, but I know we could have done more if there were affordances from having certainly some of those bespoke systems that we had out of the way sooner. We spoke about some of those finances. Well, enterprise cloud-based financial tools, not that are just supported by a few people in a small office somewhere, but that are supported by a multi-billion-pound global supplier and trusted by millions of accountants, or hundreds of thousands of accountants at least, all over the world. We spoke about some of that forward view. There are enterprise performance management tools out there. Hopefully, if I get time, I'll talk about it in my final slide, that really can give insight into data that a human would find very hard to piece together, or certainly would be a laborious effort. Cloud-based tools, that, as well as just the interactive experience that you're not having to install something, it's a much the at your fingertips user experience, driven by a supplier with who can afford millions in user experience design, and exploit new technologies quicker. That's the affordances of cloud. So a supplier like Oracle, being able to give you talent recruitment solutions along in parallel to all of the core HR and payroll. That's the kind of benefits you can capitalize on. And certainly some of the guest speakers who will be introducing in just a second, we'll talk more about that. Business intelligence tools. So we spoke about some of the enterprise reporting tools, but just those analytics out of the box. So not just, yes, you can, quite right, you should invest in big management information exploitation, but those small scale analytics that just come out of the box. No longer do you have to invest time building a report that everyone else has. You can download it, you can bring it into the application. It's there, it's at your fingertips, it's literally out of the box. I've spoken about some of those managed service affordances. A cloud-based solution that is familiar, that has certified qualifications in. That kind of expertise is often hard to come by and often hard to retain, whereas a managed service partner has that in-house and, as I say, gives you the assurance of adhering to those SLAs without some of the headaches. And a couple of the final points there. Cloud-based solutions with Oracle. You spoke about some of those GDPR fines and concerns there. You're talking about applications that are built on military-grade security, which I don't think anyone can attest that their data center back it on campus would necessarily conform to that same level of security. And self-service, decentralized systems that remove those paper processes and empower your users, again, being a marker of efficiency. So that's it for the main thrust of my slides. I've spoken a lot about what I think cloud brings to universities. I've spoken a lot about how I feel it meets challenges. But what I'd like to actually do now is bring some of our customers in. So recently, Namos did an implementation of core HR in University of Greenwich, and I've got three, or hopefully on the line, three guest speakers from University of Greenwich who are going to share their experiences of moving to the cloud. So if Richard, if you could just unmute Layla, Nadia and Louise. Oops. Sorry, guys. Nadia, Louise.
Unmuted.
Hello, how you doing, guys? Would you just like to introduce yourselves? So, if I start with Nadia.
Hi, I'm Nadia Martin. I've been at the University of Greenwich since 2006. I'm currently the Senior HR Operations Officer alongside Louise. And we've been working on our transition to the cloud since the middle of last year. And we've just gone live with HCM. And we're working on our first payroll out of Horizon at the end of May. So we're parallel running at the moment, and it's very busy time, but quite exciting.
And Lale?
Hi, I'm Lally Williams. I'm Head of Organisation and People Development at the University of Greenwich. I've been with the university since 2016. And one of the things I will say is that I'm here instead of Kirsty Goulding, who unfortunately is the kind of senior sponsor for the project, but it's her birthday. So happy birthday, Kirsty. I just wanted to get that in there. But also I'm a stakeholder with Kirsty, so I can hopefully give some sort of insights and benefits around what I've seen so far with our implementation.
And Louise?
Hi, I'm Louise Mitchell. I've been at the University of Greenwich on and off for the last 22 years. So based virtually my whole career there, bar an 18-month stint at South Bank. We've been working alongside Nadia, really updating our HR processes, modernising the way we work. We're very paper-based and quite old-fashioned in the systems that we've got. So it's exciting times to bring ourselves up to the current century.
Okay, so I've got 3 questions for you guys. So first one, so for those not aware, can you tell me a bit about University of Greenwich and what were your drivers that started your journey to the cloud? So if I could bring in Lale to talk about the university history.
Sure. The university's been going since 1890, and it's a post-92 university. For those of you that don't really know what post-92 means, is that it's a modern university. So effectively it used to be what we used to call a technical university previously, but it actually became the same as other universities in 1992 when the legislation came in. And I would say that actually its key reputation is to be known as a university that's really been community-based and widened participation. And its real onus is to think about its student experience. Within London, it's part of the Alliance sector. So in effect, we work with other Alliance universities to kind of compare and contrast what we do. But what we try and do is to try and ensure that we've got a competitive advantage, and we're very international. So I think we work with over 150 countries, and we have about 20,000 students recruited internationally. Sorry, about 10,000 students are recruited internationally and about 10,000 are from home.
Super. So a considerable size university there. Nadia, Louise, we were talking yesterday about some of those drivers of moving to the cloud. Try to illustrate from your personal experience what were those drivers? What were the concerns that you felt cloud-based adoption would alleviate for you?
So we've had EBS since 2003. So it was only 3 years old when I joined the university, and it really wasn't maintained and developed to the best of its ability. We really sort of we adapted it to suit what we needed it to do without really investing in the things that it could already do. In addition to that, we had a lot of other systems that we were using. So we have an e-recruitment system currently. We have a system for appraisal and balanced academic workloads. There's Banner in the university as well, which we use for certain things. So there's a lot of bolt-on systems with that. So there's no, and they don't all talk to each other. So there's no single point of truth. There's no, this is the record and this is up to date, and therefore all the other systems are correct as well. You have to do it in this system and that system and that system. So that's always been a bit of a problem for us. Worse than that, not everything that should have been sat in HR was sat in HR. There were lots of local arrangements, local systems maintaining certain things. We are aware that within the university there was a tendency to save personnel files, paper and electronic, outside of HR because there was no access for managers to HR. We had tried to launch self-service a couple of times, and then there were a couple of pockets of the university that were doing sickness recording via self-service, but it wasn't widely used, and it really just hadn't worked for us in EBS. We tried other things, for example, running our letters out of EBS, mail merging, and it just would not work. And I think it was down to, you know, I've seen that work in EBS, but it just couldn't do it with ours. And I think it was because we'd done so many bits to it, we'd adapted it in so many ways, it just could no longer function to it the best of its ability. And then as well, it was we're about to lose the support for the version that we're on. So there was a decision along the lines of what we're going to do, update EBS or move to a new product. So there was a lot of considerations for us. And, you know, I don't think we should underestimate the fact that we had a staff survey, and there was a real feeling from the wider university that this wasn't really the solution that they were expecting from their HR department. You know, they expected to be able to access, line managers expected to be able to access the data on their staff. People expected to be able to go into a system and update their details in one system, and that to be adopted everywhere. So it wasn't suitable for a modern institution.
So you've outlined an awful lot of risk areas there, which certainly gave a palpable drive, I'd imagine at the time. Louise, to bring you on some of those drivers around. So yes, addressing risk and meeting expectations of staff, but also understand it was already an existing aim, a part of your strategy.
Yeah, as part of the digital strategy, we're trying to move a lot of our sort of services into cloud-based solutions. We want to remove a lot of paper processes. Obviously, that counts towards our sustainability as well, and efficiency, and minimises GDPR risks, really.
Yeah, indeed. So on to my next question. So with those drivers, I'd imagine there were quite some lofty ambitions set and some expectations, and some benefits promised. So in your own from your own experience, what benefits have you realized? And I am aware, of course, that bearing in mind you implemented your core HR in just 7 months, from contract signed to actually live system use, which is some kind of record. And because of that, of course, you're only in your 2nd month. So how many of those drivers are you already experiencing? So Nadia, if I could just bring you in on, you spoke there about some of your processes about making single source of truth. Has it delivered?
At the moment, we're still running the 2 systems, because obviously we're still parallel running. But already you can see that the fact that we haven't customized the product means that there will be a consistency going forward in the way that we can work, in the way that our processes will need to be, and everybody will need to buy into those. So from an HR point of view, from an operational point of view, it's really encouraging for us to see that we will be able to get some kind of consistency in the way that we work. There's a number of processes that sit out in different areas of the university that through this product have needed to be brought back into HR, and that will mean that there is consistency in the way those things are handled. For example, just a small example, annual leave. You know, the interpretation of the rules become narrow because you'll be given your entitlement via the system, and that's one calculation. So that will free up time outside of HR. You know, we do that calculation all the time anyway, so nobody will have to take their time filling out the cards and that sort of thing. It's a much more automated process. There's a number of people using it. You know, it's been rolled out across for people to see their own details at the moment, and people are really enjoying using it.
That's fantastic to hear. Louise, one of the things we were speaking about the other day was around and certainly it's picked up in the drivers around, whilst it's a decentralized system with self-service, about some of those centralized controls. Would you like to talk a little bit about that?
I mean, obviously, as Nadia said, in terms of interpretation, people have had their own interpretation of HR rules, and obviously we'll be bringing that in. We'll be maintaining control. There will be reports that managers can access instantly, and everyone will have the same type of reports. There won't be a report built for this person. Everyone will have access to the same data. And as Nadia said, I think we've done little training at it, and everyone seems to be quite engaged and using it without, having to ask HR all the time how to use things.
Superb. So my final question, that is an awful lot to have achieved in a short space of time. But I was challenged to ask, what else do you guys see that's in the pipeline?
So for us, we've, as I say, we've taken it out of the box really. We've done very little to it. And over time, we will also be introducing recruitment, which means we'll get rid of our e-recruitment system. The talent and learning is going in. So with this product, we can have everything in one place, and that's our aim. And over time, that there's all sorts of things we can bring into it that are not in our current scope, but will be in the future. And I think for us, where we got to with EBS was that we were completely out of date with it. We hadn't maintained it, we hadn't upgraded it, but that won't happen with this product. We'll always be up
Also,
there, and anything that's coming, we can see. Sorry, Lou.
And also, EBS really for us had just become a mechanism to pay people. The data was, inaccurate, inconsistent, and the reporting element of it was virtually non-existent. We had enough basic business object reports to sort of function, but there's no insight into staff really. It's just very basic statistical data that we can get out of it really.
I'd like to add really from that point that Louise has brought out around insights, that's probably going to be the most beneficial perspective from my position. We are thinking about decisions and how we make our decisions, and having very little data informed decision tools is quite difficult. So you're trying to always balance your judgment against previous experience against the current data, and when the current data tends to be either incomplete or inaccurate or just lagging, it's really difficult to sometimes actually decide what's useful and what's not useful. So from my perspective, actually having a very, very accurate source of data that is more clear, and it tells me a lot more about the employees and the journey that they're experiencing is vital. So that makes it a very different way of working from my perspective. And I agree completely. When we're trying to think about talent programs, you're trying to think about forward forecasting really. And without some of that information being there as a real clear baseline, it's quite difficult to actually then do forecasts around what you want to do and how much you want to kind of then budget for, and then how much you want to ensure that you're putting in as kind of future programs for the next 3 or 4 years. So really it actually gives us quite a rich source of baseline information by which we can start to actually make much more accurate interventions.
And that data is accessible by line managers. So it's not, I've got to ring HR, get them to run me a report, send me the report, I need to then analyse it. They can have access to that stuff. And while we're talking about reporting, obviously we can't talk about HGIs without talking about HISA, and we're working with Namos on their development of a tool to assist us with HISA.
Yeah, so we're currently building out an end-to-end HISA solution that should take away all of those laborious data collection processes, but capture information from that single source, but actually do the mapping and give you affordances so you can actually get the piece of data out in the prescribed format. So that'll be an exciting. I hope to be presenting at ESI's or something with you guys to either side of me about the benefits that's delivered. And
would it be worth?
Lale, we've just got a couple of minutes left. We touched on very briefly about talent and learning. What for? Given your role, what does that mean for you?
Oh, it's significant. So, for example, I kind of think a lot about my annual programs, and actually a lot of my annual programs need to have good evaluations, and even just to bring all the evaluations together from one learning management system across all of the activities we run will be significant. We can see, for example, who might be accessing our learning, who might not, who's finding certain programs more beneficial than others. It just gives you customer insight that you don't have currently. And actually, therefore, you should actually be thinking a little bit about how do you engage customers across the university? Who are they and who doesn't engage with us? And why don't they? It makes it much more purposeful. So to actually just have that is quite significant. And it's less of a kind of, finger in the air exercise. Not like you get from experience, but it's there to kind of then reinforce the experience that you do have. And I would say that actually just having it from the outset, so knowing the employee and actually all their skills and having all of that information there is really valuable, because when you're thinking about actually how do they want to learn, they're going to be leading the learning far more than you are, and you should be bringing that base into what you already know and design. So from my perspective, it's much more valuable.
So we are running with just a minute to spare. I'm going to flash up the last slide. So I hope you guys have found this useful. We actually have another one of these HE webinars that's focused on cloud and managed services. We've also got another one on ERP. Oh, sorry. We've got one on EPM on the 30th. So whilst we have run out of time, I'm happy to remain on the call. If anyone has any questions, just post them up in the chat, or and we can unmute you and bring you in. But I'm happy if anyone wants to drop off the call, realise we're running slightly over.
So thank you, Richard, and thank you to all our co-presenters there. As Richard said, if anyone wants to ask any questions, you can put it in the messenger or feel free to speak. We've got one question so far, Richard, from Lucy, which is, what's been the reaction to centralising policies, for example, annual leave, and how has this been managed politically? Maybe Layla, you'd like to kick off?
I was actually going to say at the moment, because it's just rolled out into kind of the solution, I don't think we've had that many individuals possibly actually starting to look at it just yet. But I think the conclusion has always been that we needed to have consistency. That was the point of introducing the system, and actually having the visibility of the leave that you have is a key part of it. It's been something that staff, and therefore actually if we're providing the solution clearly to them, it almost takes away a little bit of the kind of, under the user adoption piece, if that makes sense. I don't know if Nadia or Louise want to kind of share any of their experience or thoughts on it so far. Are they still there?
As you say, it's not rolled out, particularly widely at the minute. We're still working on it, and it will be a significantly different way of working, because line managers will be signing off everybody's annual leave, which is not the way we have worked previously. So this first year will be quite a steep learning curve on whether that is actually going to work, whether that's feasible. I think from our point of view, we don't think it should be a problem, because the cloud is so, the cloud product is so accessible. You don't have to log into the system to approve the leave. You can do it from the email, that sort of thing. I don't think it should be too much of a hardship, but I think this will be quite a steep learning curve for us this year.
Indeed. Have we got any more questions, Richard? I've just got flipped across. No, I think that's brought us to a close then, guys. Apologies running a couple of minutes over. We'll be making this available on our YouTube channel, but my contact details are certainly going to be shared with everyone. And please don't hesitate, get in touch. It'd be great to hear from you. Thank you all. Oh, and a special thank you to our guest speakers. Really do appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks all.
Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye.